Hi, I'm Steve Levin, Security Best Practices Lead at Palo Alto Networks. I'm here to discuss quantum computing and its impact on security with two of Palo Alto Networks' quantum technology and cryptography experts, Phil Kwan and Ritu Chanakeshava. Phil has more than 30 years in the industry as a networking and security specialist, including senior management roles in both IT and product management with multiple Silicon Valley companies. Phil has been with Palo Alto Networks for over 10 years and currently specializes in quantum security. Ritu has been in the networking and application security industry for the last 12 years. As a senior product manager and cryptography expert, Ritu has co-developed product and strategy for the Quantum Security Initiative at Palo Alto Networks. Ritu also leads SSL inspection and management across PAN-OS product lines, which includes hardware NGFWs, software and cloud VM series firewalls, and Prisma Access. This is the first in a series of videos that guides you through quantum computing threats, planning a transition to quantum-resistant network, post-quantum cryptography, quantum key distribution, and quantum random number generators, including industry standards such as RFC 8784, which you can use to create quantum-resistant VPNs. Quantum computers accelerate the ability to break today's cryptographic algorithms, expose keys and secrets, and decrypt your data. The good news is that these sessions show you how to start building a quantum attack-resistant network today. This session focuses on the security threat from quantum computers, how soon quantum computers might break modern encryption and impact data privacy, and how to start thinking about the post-quantum problem and transitioning to a solution. So, the industry is starting to hear about quantum computers and how they can dramatically change the landscape. Phil, what exactly is a quantum computer?
Well, thanks for that question, Steve. So what is a quantum computer? A quantum computer is really the next generation of the supercomputing platform that's radically different from the classical supercomputing platforms that we have today that is basically based on electrons of ones and zeros. So a supercomputer of the quantum type is based on the laws of quantum mechanics, which is really a polarization of photons or elements of light. And these supercomputers are designed to solve some very, very complex problems. So how does it differ from a classical quantum computer? Basically, it's by these qubits that you see here. And these qubits have quite a few different elements or different characteristics that gives them their superpowers that could be millions of times faster than a classical supercomputer. The first one I'd like to talk about is superpositioning. This simply means that the qubit could both represent a 1 and a 0 at the very same time. And these states are often logarithmically in scale. And so, for example, if you had 2 qubits, it'll be 2 to the second power, which gives you 4 states. And if you have 3 qubits, it'll give you 2 to the 8th power, right? Or 2 to the 3rd power, which is 8. And so if you can imagine, like IBM is one of the leaders in terms of qubit density today. And last year, they developed a chip with 433 qubits. And this year, they're on track to develop another chip that's around 1,100 qubits. And so if you had perfect quality in these qubits, it would be something like 2 to the power of 1,100. And these are the amount of states that you have. And so the last item I have on that list is entanglement. And so scientists really don't understand how we entangle qubits. But when we produce these qubits, we could put a special bond between them called entanglement. And with this special bond, these qubits will generate the same results from a quantum algorithm no matter where they are. So we can have one qubit in this lab with us, and we can have another qubit on the other side of the planet, and it would generate the same results. So in terms of how we solve problems that classical computers can't, now talking about the special qubit characteristics, right, and taking some of the new quantum algorithms that the mathematicians and the scientists and the computer people are forming, you're going to have what we call a multi-dimensional space to solve some very, very complex problems. And so the way that it was explained to me when I first started getting into quantum was that if you took a look at a database with, say, 50 million rows, and you're looking for, say, 300 or 400 different combinations of how these rows relate to each other, using a classical supercomputer, you would have to pass all 50 million rows from top to bottom through your algorithm, and it would have to search for all of these results top to bottom, and that's why it takes such a long time. With a quantum computer in a multidimensional space, what you do is you program the new algorithms to look for every outcome that you want all at once, and then you pass the data through it one time, and it figures it all out all at once. And that's why it's hundreds of millions of times faster. And so, although a quantum computer can provide, humankind with a lot of benefits, there's also a dark side to it. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's with Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm. And it has a big impact on how it can help decrypt, content and break privacy rules.
Well, the security implications sound pretty serious. Now, Ritu, can you elaborate more on how quantum computers can break modern encryption?
Absolutely, Steve. PKI, or public key infrastructure, offers a secure way to identify users, devices, and apps, which are fundamental to authentication and confidentiality. With digital signatures and certificates, it creates a unique credential for the certificate owner, which is then validated by the receiver. PKI also provides a robust encryption of the content so that the communication between these two parties can remain private. We know that PKI makes use of both symmetric and asymmetric encryption to keep all assets secure. Now, delving more, asymmetric encryption uses a key pair. That's a public key and a private key for encryption and decryption. Given the widespread use of asymmetric encryption for communications between two untrusted endpoints, this underpins the security of a significant share of data share, data transfer, and transactions today. According to Google Transparency Report, about 95% of internet traffic is on HTTPS protocol that relies on PKI and SSL. The kind of ciphers in use here are RSA, Diffie-Hellman, elliptical curves for key exchange, as well as digital signatures and certificates. Now, what we've known for the past 30 years is about a highly sophisticated quantum algorithm named after the researcher himself, Peter Shor, the Shor's algorithm, which is, like I just said, a quantum algorithm that solves factoring of a very large number n in logarithmic time and space. The significance is that it implies public key cryptography might be easily broken given a sufficiently large quantum computer. The second type of PKI, symmetric cryptography. This encryption relies on a single pre-shared key responsible for encrypting and decrypting data. Typically, a password or a passphrase along with the symmetric encryption algorithm, like the AES, is used for this. Some of the common use cases are data at rest. The data that's stored on a hard drive at a data center or a cloud resource, laptop, flash drive, etc., leverages symmetric encryption like AES along with hash function like SHA-2 or SHA-3. Another common use case is the virtual private network, or VPN, that creates a secure connection between two trusted nodes in networks and then uses AES with a mixed pre-shared key. Symmetric cryptography and hash functions are considered to be relatively secure in this decade. Though using Grover's algorithm, quantum attacks can be sped up, and as an interim fix, doubling the key size can effectively block a quantum attack just now. So Steve, another key detail that I want to share with our audience is, despite the accelerated innovation in quantum computing, a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, or CRQC, is going to be required to break these existing classical encryption. You may ask, what's a CRQC? It's a purpose-built quantum computer that's optimized for Shor's algorithm or another quantum algorithm that can brute force a cryptographic algorithm to break the hard mathematical problem and arrive at a solution in much less time, estimated to be hours compared to millions of years that a classical supercomputer would have taken. So given that we know today the CRQC innovation is led by enterprises like Google or IBM, amongst others, but has also been financially fueled by nation states, making it a potential geopolitical cyber tool. There is a nation-state investment in global research to discover newer algorithms that can systematically weaken encryption with a quantum computer. We have to accept that the advent of a CRQC is in the near future, perhaps within this decade.
Security threat can be very serious if we're not adequately prepared when a CRQC becomes available. Phil, I'm sure many people listening to us right now have the same question. When do we believe a CRQC will become a reality that challenges the modern cryptographic suites?
You know, Steve, that's a really good question, and it's something like a crystal ball type question, right? But where you believe in this happening really depends on the news that you're following, some of the analyst information that you're getting, and if you're following all of the technology advancements and innovations happening in this area. But for all intents and purposes, a lot of the experts believe it's as soon as 5 years or somewhere between 10 and 15 years from now. And so some of the reason why you're seeing this wide range of answers is basically where the money is being invested and where the innovation is happening. And so if you take a look at the second point on this slide, right, you're going to see that there's a lot of money being poured in by nation states. And so China is one of the largest investors in terms of quantum research, followed by the EU, followed by the United States. And so those are the top three. But we're also seeing a lot of investment come into play from also VCs, funding startup companies and things like that. Especially in the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen an astronomical amount of money coming in. And also, as quantum is maturing in terms of the research field, we're seeing a lot of academic institutions get more involved in the research of quantum computing. And so where is all the money coming into play? It's really coming into play in 3 different areas. So one is the amount of quantum qubits we could fit on a chip. So this is quantum density. That's one area of heavy investment. The second area is basically in the quality of these qubits. Right now, it's early technology, and the qubits are fairly noisy. They're fairly inconsistent. And so a lot of research is going into perfecting the quality. And the last area where we're seeing some significant investment is in the quantum algorithms themselves. And so by perfecting quantum algorithms, of course, we can get more streamlined, more efficient with this technology. And so, of course, some of the other areas that can affect how fast we can get to Y2Q, the year of quantum, is what Rishu touched on. And that's basically a lot of nation states are doing some fairly heavy investing in specialized computers that potentially are just used for breaking PKI. And of course, those nations are never going to admit that they're researching in that area, and if they succeed, they won't come out and actually say it as well. And so the second thing that can really accelerate it is a combination of the technology and the investments that we talked about. If we get the density and if we get the qubit quality high enough, then we can dramatically speed up the ability to get to a quantum computer that could break PKI. And so lastly, of course, is all the academics, all of the quantum research that's going into the algorithms themselves can help speed that up.
Wow. With all of these investments, we can assume innovation will speed up. What are some of the significant news stories and innovations that you've seen, Phil? And will we be ready for year to quantum, Y2Q?
Yeah, that's another fantastic question. And I can tell you, I prepped a couple of slides here that we can go through. So Steve, I prepped together a couple of slides that sort of illustrate some of the points that we're going to talk about. The one on the left-hand side there in the slide really talks about the nation states. And so this is an example of the United States and the Biden administration signing into laws and putting in some national security memos of how seriously we have to take this threat and what some of those deadlines that the agencies as well as organizations have to hit in order to reach a quantum readiness state. And so on the right-hand side there, this is an example of something that China is doing. Remember, China is one of the largest investors in this technology, and they're basically pretty far ahead in quite a few different areas. And so at the beginning of 2023, some of their researchers announced some very interesting technology breakthroughs in coming up with a new algorithm that takes Shor's as well as some other components of some other algorithms and basically proving mathematically that they didn't need 1 million qubits to start breaking PKI. In fact, they stated that they needed only 372 noisy qubits with 1,000 plus subdepths to start really breaking down PKI and RSA in that. And so this is a dramatic advancement in this area. So this slide talks a little bit more about qubit density. Remember, that's one of the areas where a lot of investments are going. And so you see 2 examples here where we're making some interesting innovation to where we really don't have to get to 1 million qubits on a single chip. We're using technology that we've done in the past, which is parallel processing. And we could put multiple quantum chips together, pass qubits between them fairly successfully, and reach that high density without having to reach a chip with 100,000 qubits on them. And so University of Sussex broke out with some interesting news earlier this year. And then IBM announced that in a couple of years, they're going to surpass the 4,000 qubits by using multiple chips, and they'll be able to reach hundreds of thousands of qubits. So on this last slide, I think I'd like to talk about two additional examples, and this is qubit quality. On the left-hand side there, IBM made a significant announcement in the August timeframe and said that they reached a 0.8% error rate in terms of qubit quality. And this is significant because it parallels an existing standard that's been in place for about 20 years to measure quality in data processing, right? And so this is a fairly big announcement. On the right-hand side is a startup company that we wanted to mention just to prove that there's a lot of advancements going on in algorithms, right? And so this company has received funding to actually work on algorithms that's going to run on noisy qubits. And so if they bear fruit here, you can see that we're going to dramatically increase the technology and the time frame.
Ritu, with all of these advancements, how should companies start thinking about this problem, and what can they do to prepare for the transition to a post-quantum world?
Steve, that's an important question we get asked by many of our customers. Where do I start, and who do I need to hire? A lot of the quantum readiness activity will require traditional IT to invest in modernization efforts. So make sure your IT teams are talking to vendors like Palo Alto Networks and asking about their quantum security plans, their strategic approach to migration, and their product roadmap. All right, now let's go through the 5-step process that the KED-C recommends. Starting early can prevent a rush to implementation, which ensures quality remains high and costs predictable. So that's step 1, start right there. Engage the community and develop an understanding of PQCs. Build awareness in procurement teams so that they can incorporate quantum-safe requirements into requests for proposals, RFPs, with vendors like ourselves and others. Let's talk about step 2 now. Determine who is responsible for each part of the network infrastructure. Even if an organization does not own their own software development, it is important to understand what cryptography is in use and work with that service group to learn their quantum readiness plans. Let's look at 3. To start inventorying, review every device, system, code, platform, and vendor that's used in your organization. Understand what cipher suites, key sizes, and versions are in use for TLS, SSH, or even VPN, how certificates are managed, where and how are encryption keys generated and stored, and many more. So it's critical to estimate the potential future loss in data related to any quantum event and compare that to the capital value of the equipment that's at risk. With the inventorying complete, your next step is to prioritize which transition needs to occur first. And I think there are 3 factors that you need to base it on. First, location and nature of the data itself. Where is this data stored? What is sensitive in this data that needs to be secured? Second, lifespan of the data. How long does this data need to stay confidential? Third, susceptibility to an attack. Example, key exchange is at the highest risk today. So understanding the cryptography suite is important for you. All right, let's look at step 4 now. Assess different migration solutions. It could be PQC for SSL, QKD for VPN, or others. Cryptography libraries are readily available today to support NIST submissions. So for example, like OpenSSL integrates with libOQS, you have Bouncy Castle, you have forks of Wolf SSL and Boring SSL. These are just a few to name. Experimentation will build awareness and inform any challenges with the transition. So whether you need new hardware to run these PQC algorithms or performance that's impacted in your existing hardware, and then migrating from RSA to PQC, what's the time taken depending on the asset? HSM that needs to support PQC key generation and key store, as an example. These are just a few to name. As a general rule, I recommend that companies must prepare to adopt a hybrid security approach to de-risk the migration process. As in, hybrid PQCs for SSL in combination with standard PQCs is one way to look at it. When adopting solutions for VPN, PQC VPN for maybe client to site while QKD for VPN and site-to-site use cases is another. So another general rule, I think, is investing in crypto agility is very, very important. If a cryptographic primitive of a system is discovered to be vulnerable, especially due to a quantum threat or another attack vector, crypto agility is what will allow organizations to adapt and replace those algorithms more flexibly and swiftly to maintain resilience. All right, let's look at 5 now. Given the path to quantum readiness is going to be a fairly elaborate and a very long journey, engaging with experts to help monitor your progress will help tremendously to continually reassess the timeline and the risk level. We can truly only succeed when every vendor and their respective industries make the shift to quantum secure cryptography.
Wow. Are there any government mandates and recommendations around quantum security that our audience can research and follow?
Absolutely, Steve. I put together this slide in order to help our audience take a look at where we started. I mean, Rishu and I started in this industry a couple of years ago, and what we found really helpful, I listed on this slide deck. And so on the left-hand side, we listed some of the things that are happening in the United States and what the governments are doing to mandate that the agencies as well as organizations do to prepare for this transition from the classic to the post-quantum. Now, if you're not from the United States, of course, there's equal recommendations, equal laws and things like that are coming out from many other world governments. So definitely check with the organizations and the agencies in your area to find out what is required of you. And so here you see a couple of national security memos that the United States and the Presidential Administration Office has put out. You see laws that Congress has put into place. And on the right-hand side, we listed a couple of really good white papers that are put out by several agencies like CISO, Department of Homeland Security, as well as the National Institute of Standards. And these will basically show you what's taking place in terms of how to prepare the technologies that's about to come out, and then how to best make that transition and prepare and get started.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about the 3 different memorandums that came out of at least the United States. The first one, NSM-10, or the National Security Memorandum, that was a statement released by Biden administration back in May 22, it strongly emphasizes on mitigating all quantum risks by 2035. And it focuses on crypto agility, amongst others, as the foundational requirement. This memo goes into a 90-day plan, calls out 2 key points. 1, critical infra owners and operators to work with NIST to form open working groups to adopt quantum security. 2, migration to post-quantum cryptography project to be established, and NCCOE to work with private sector to address challenges. This memo also has a 180-day plan, and that's said to be repeated annually thereafter, so calls out another 2 key sets of points. First, Homeland Security, CISO, and sector risk management agencies to engage with critical infra and state, local, tribal, and territorial partners regarding QC risks and migration. OMB, CISA, NIST, and NSA to establish requirements for inventorying cryptographic systems in IT. The highlight, which almost immediately impacts all enterprises and telecom, is when the memo calls out 2 specific timelines: an expectation of NIST's PQC standards timeline, which we now know is before the end of 23, latest early 2024, and it also calls out for NIST to propose a timeline to deprecate quantum vulnerable cryptography that's in use today, almost signaling the industry to gear up for ending the life of existing standards in play. Let's look at the next one. The M2302 is an executive memorandum that was released by the President's Office. This was specifically released by Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, and it was back in November 2022. Given federal agencies are moving to a zero trust architecture, this also means adoption of strong encryption across agencies. So M2302 prioritizes crypto inventory to be completed by May 23 and annually thereafter for active cryptographic systems with a focus on high value assets and systems particularly vulnerable to a CRQC. This memo calls out 3 important things. First, assess funding required for PQC migration. Second, report automated cryptographic assessments. Third, testing pre-standard PQC in production. Another great initiative coming out of this memo is NIST CISA, and FedRAMP PMO are expected to create a working group to exchange PQC testing results and share best practices or architecture recommendations between the agencies and the private sector partners. The last one that I want to talk about is the HR 7535, which is a public law that was passed by the US government in December 22. And this law is called the Quantum Computing Cybersecurity Preparedness Act. Yes, it's a mouthful, but it's a very important one. The highlights here: this law requires OMB to prioritize switch over to PQC within a year of the standards, so we know it's going to be 2024 as the deadline. And it also requires OMB to send strategy reports to Congress and obtain budget by end of this year, which is December 2023.
I mean, that's a lot of timelines, Rishu. I mean, that's a lot of great detail. Thank you. And so on this slide, I just want to sort of point out, how the entire world's looking at this problem. So this is a really great white paper from GSMA. And what I want to call out here is the left-hand column is the country, and the column right to its right is what PQ algorithms they're going to follow. And so you could see that NIST is going to provide general guidelines for the majority of the countries around the world. But that doesn't mean that every country is going to follow NIST's recommendations here. And so if you have a look at this list, right, you're going to see like countries like China, South Korea, potentially Japan, and other nations may follow and see what NIST is doing, but they may implement PQCs of their own as well. So if you're a multinational conglomerate and you have offices all around the world, or if you're outside the United States, you should really be researching your local governments to see exactly what their recommendations are for PQC crypto algorithms, because they're going to be different between various countries.
Well, thank you, Richu and Phil. You've given us a lot to think about. Today we covered how cryptographically relevant quantum computers could be viable as soon as the end of the decade. Together with Shor's and Grover's algorithms, a quantum computer will defeat the encryption technology we rely on to keep our data safe and private. Significant investments are being made in many areas of quantum computing, and this is accelerating the timeline to Y2Q. For that reason, it's critical to put together a team to understand the quantum threat, the technologies that can keep you safe, and government mandates and recommendations so you can start your migration to a post-quantum world. Thank you for joining us. Join us again for our next video in the series, which dives deeper into quantum threats and how they impact your business.